Well, hopefully you had a chance to check out our sermon from this last week. Pastor Bob talked a lot about the fact that Jesus was our atoning sacrifice and pointed back to the Old Testament on what that even would mean. One really important question that we can come away with from the passage in 1 John he spoke about as well is really wrapped around this idea of how can we know we're saved? How can we know we have that relationship with Him? And the exact wording is, according to 1 John chapter 2, verses 3 through 6, how can we know that we have come to know Jesus? How is God's love made complete in us? And so it lays it out pretty crystal clear, but I want to look at those verses. Starting in verse 3 of chapter 2, it says, "And by this we know that we have come to know Him, if we keep His commandments. Whoever says, 'I know Him,' but does not keep His commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps His word, in him truly the love of God is perfected. By this we may know that we are in Him. Whoever says he abides in Him ought to walk in the same way in which He walked." Now I want you to notice that, saying if we follow His commandments. And what that means is not that God expects you to do it perfectly. God knows that we are still going to sin and mess up. But it means we are genuinely making that effort to try and live the way God would want us to. If you are truly a follower of Jesus, if you've come to know Jesus, when you're aware of the fact that you have messed up and sinned, it bugs you. It shouldn't be just something that's not a big deal. It genuinely irritates us that we fall into sin still. When we're aware of it, because again, we sin so often, we're not always aware of it. But when we become aware of a way that we are in sin, it annoys us, and it means we are responded with, I want to change. I need to do something about that. We never become just callous to the fact that it's not that big a deal, like everybody sins, it's whatever. No, it frustrates us that we continually end up in that. Now that doesn't mean you just sit there mad all the time. It means that we also acknowledge the fact that, like Pastor Bob said, Jesus is our atoning sacrifice. That what Jesus did on the cross means that we can be forgiven from that. That we don't have to hold on to that shame and guilt. That instead we can go to Him and say, God, I know there's nothing I could do in order to pay for the sins I did, but fortunately you already did it. And I thank You for that. And I pray that You would forgive me for messing up, and that You would help me to turn away from this sin. That's how we pray through any sin that comes in our lives. If you are genuinely frustrated and irritated by the sin in your life, that is a sign that you know Jesus, that you have come to know Him, you have that relationship with Him. I think one thing you see throughout John is also, and I know Pastor Bob mentioned it as well, is loving others. If you're saying, oh, I believe in the Bible, but I can't stand any person walking the face of this earth, everybody's irritating to me, there may be a disconnect there. That if we are truly living out these commandments, it over and over tells us we need to love. We need to care for the people around us, even the people that aren't so easy to do that with. And there will be people like that in our lives. God calls us to love. He even says the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then He says the second is very similar. Love your neighbor as yourself. Guys, following these commandments, a huge part of that is doing so in love. So may we love the people that we come into contact with. May we be frustrated by our sin enough to where we turn away from it and slowly become more and more like Jesus every day, knowing we'll never be perfect, but hoping that God continually makes us more like Him all the time. We'll see you soon.